to everyone. It's 11:01. I'm going to call the Electric Utility Board to order. And the first order of business is public comment, and we do have a speaker today. Have 3 minutes to speak, and the name is, and I'll probably mess this up, Tiffany White.
Gwen.
Tiffany White.
Before Ms. White, before there's an introduction, I believe, Ms. White, I'm going to go ahead and call our city council into order as well. It is June the 20th. It is 11:02, and we are called into order.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Madam Councilwoman. Councilwoman.
I have a guest with me today, and she will be shadowing me for a few days, and I'll let her kind of say who she is.
Okay, and are you Tiffany?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then your agenda item number that you're speaking on, or the topic?
I don't have a topic. I'm just here because I'm shadowing, so I just wanted to have.
Oh, okay, you're just here to be nice.
Yes, I'm just here to be nice. I am a principal at Richard Gilbert Academy. Can you hear me on the microphone? Well, I'm here with a program with South Plains and Region 17
There we go.
to review the intersection, the cross-section between educational leadership and city leadership. So I get to follow Councilwoman Sheila Patterson Harrison today, and so I'm just here. I'm glad to be here. I'm happy to be here, and I don't have any item to talk about.
Well, we're delighted to have you, and keep your roller skates on to keep up with.
You know, that's what I'm trying to do, and my pen out. I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot. Thank you so much.
We're delighted to have you.
Thank you.
Was that the only speaker that we had? And we did it within the 3 minutes, Jenny. So Jenny is our taskmaster that keeps us all organized. If there is no other public comment, then I will call into executive session. We're now going to recess an executive session in accordance with 1 VTCA Government Code 551.086 on competitive matters of LP&L. 2 VTCA Government Code 551.071 seeking advice of and consultation with LPL's attorneys on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with Chapter 551 of the Government Code, and seeking advice of its attorneys about pending or contemplated litigation or settlement offers, and VTCA Government Code 551.074, deliberate the appointment of a public officer or employee, and to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, and/or duties of a public officer or employee, Director of Electric Utilities, and General Counsel. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Gwen. At this time, City Council will hold an executive session for the purpose of consulting with city staff regarding the following: competitive matters of the public power utilities under Section 551.086 of the Texas Government Code, and pending or contemplated litigation or settlement offers, and hold consultation with attorney under Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code. And finally, personnel matters under Section 551.074 of the Texas Government Code. At this time, City Council will move into executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ready, gentlemen? Okay. It is now 1:02, and I'm going to call the Electric Utility Board back into open session. And please let the minutes note that the mayor has left. Okay, Joel, are you the first one? You got to approve the minutes before we can let you talk. So is there a motion to approve the minutes? There's a motion, a second? Second. There's a motion and a second to approve the regular utility minute on May 16th. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Now, Joel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got great news. I will be brief. We're still analyzing the outcome of the legislative session. There's been a lot of things that are happening. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces that we don't fully understand yet, to be honest with you. I've asked Matt to piece together a presentation coming up for next month Matt is at the American Public Power Association conference in Seattle as we speak, and so trying to learn what he can out there. So he will be ready to do the presentation in our July meeting. Just a public service announcement, the Financial Review Committee is set to meet on the 10th of July, and it'll be kind of a first cut at our budget, what we'll be talking about at that session.
Mr. Wilson will be leading that charge, correct, for the Finance Committee?
Hope that wasn't news. And we're going to be filing our transmission cost of service filing. This is our first full filing that we've done where we can actually look backwards and do the way you're supposed to establish your rates for transmission wholesale service.
When will that filing be made?
It's next week, next Friday,
Okay, next Friday.
by next Friday.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's going to be done. That's approximately, I'm going to round up, Harvey, it's $44 million in projected revenue stream that we have. It's a little bit higher than what we've got right now with our current rates and filing, but not a whole lot more. But we're looking forward to having a good push through the Public Utility Commission in order to get that supported and put into service for us. So on that note, I'm going to stand aside and let Casey take over unless you guys got any questions for
Just
me
one
about.
question, we'll file it on June 30th, is that what you're saying?
It's Friday. Jenny, isn't it Friday next week? The 30th.
The
yes.
30th, and then there is some period of time for them to look at it, correct?
Well, yeah, this is going to be a lengthy process.
Okay.
Lengthy as in it could go a year. Okay? All right, Casey?
It's your designee under the director's report. I just wanted to take a quick moment. You all are familiar with Mr. Tom Jennings. He is eligible to be licensed in the state of Texas, and that was big news that we just got. And so I just wanted to let you all know that he's getting sworn in at the courthouse tomorrow. So very excited to report that.
And that will take place at 10 o'clock at the courthouse, is that correct? So anybody on the board, if you want to come, you certainly can. And then I think there's a luncheon afterwards for Tom. Is that correct? Okay. Tom, congratulations. It's been a long time waiting. Thank you. Casey.
Yes, ma'am. How are y'all today? I will be taking us through our April financials. So we're going to start with our balance sheet and our cash flows. If you look at our balance sheet, you can see that we did have a decrease of $22.7 million in our cash since March. If you look over at our cash flows, we can see what contributes to that. So in our operating cash flow, we have a positive cash flow of $3.7 million. The majority of that is going to be cash from our over-collected position from March. And then in our cash from our capital and financing activities, we have negative almost $31 million. So we made our larger bond and our principal and interest payment on our bonds in April. So about $26.1 million is from that. And then we have about $4.8 million spending in our CIPs, and $2.8 million of that will be refunded by bonds in May. And then lastly, you can see that we have $4.6 million positive cash flow in our investing activities, and that's going to be from refunds on bonds for March CIP spending. So we're going to go through our financial ratios for April. If you look at our days cash on hand, you can see there is a significant decrease from 117 days to 73 days. I'm going to touch more on that in just a second. Our operating ratio has stayed about the same, so our revenues expenses are staying our revenues and expenses are staying consistent from month to month. And then you can see in our current ratio, we're now meeting the PPA benchmark of 2.84, and that's a result of our bond payment that we made in April. So I know looking at our days cash on hand, it can be a little jarring, so I wanted to give y'all a visual of our historical cash flows just to kind of show y'all this is kind of business as usual. So you can see that from February to March, we usually see an increase in our cash flows. And then from March to April, when we make that larger principal and interest payment, we'll see a decrease. And then we'll see that go back up in May. So I have looked at May, and we are back up like $12 million in cash from April to May. So moving on to our income statement and budget. This time of year, we should be about 58% of our budget. You can see that in our charges for services and purchase power. We're coming in about 53%. That's going to be due to the lower purchase power costs that we're experiencing compared to what we expected. And then in our ERCOT and TCOS, ERCOT hold harmless and TCOS revenue, we're coming in right in at 58%. And then our departmental expenses, we're coming in under budget at 48%. And then our operating income is showing over budget at 65%, and that's going to be due to us being pretty much 10% under budget on our departmental expenses. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I don't think we have any questions.
All right.
Thank you so much, Casey.
Thank y'all.
Good afternoon.
Welcome, Luke.
It's good to see you all again. I'll be updating you on our cutover efforts. This is our schedule for our substation projects. We're complete with those outside of the wall that we're building around Vicksburg substation that you can see being constructed if you're driving down the Marshall Sharp Freeway. We do have that substation energized and commissioned. It's ready to to cut over. We're just finishing some of the outside exterior construction. And that is the last piece of
Is the transformer
this project.
been moved to Vicksburg?
It has not yet. We are currently waiting on the TxDOT permits to do the heavy hauling and move it from Cook to Vicksburg.
Okay, so it's really just the wall, and then we need to get that transformer over there from Cook.
Yes, we do, and that is outside of the needs for the
Right.
cutover. This is our schedule for the feeder projects. You'll see that all of the feeder projects are complete except for Vicksburg and McDonald. We had planned to have those complete by this time last month, but those contractors have had some weather delays with the storms and the rain that we've seen. And with the deadline being moved back, we chose not to add additional resources in a shorter time frame to meet the original deadline, saving us some costs for those projects. We're just letting those contractors finish those out. So they do look to be completing those by the end of the month, and everything should be fine on that end. So
That's 720 by McDonald, and is that just the date that we think McDonald will be done?
that's to completely close out the project. So that means construction's complete, and then the final billing and project has been closed out
Okay,
by
so that's
July
closed out
20th.
till then, okay.
Yes. I'll add that all the jobs that our internal crews were working on were complete, and we did have those resources available had we needed to meet the deadline. So we were very proud of them. This is the slide that we have been tracking. We looked at this last month, and it hasn't really changed other than some of the costs that we have remaining to pay on these projects. All of our materials here, and we just have invoices that are still rolling in as the projects are completed. So those numbers will continue to decline as we close out the projects.
So will eventually there'll be all zeros on remaining to pay at some point in time?
Yes, that's correct. And then this is where our budgets are ending up for the 5 projects. Really close to where we were last month. We haven't had any changes really, and looking like we'll end up with a total of around $5.6 million left in our total budget from these projects. So we're very happy about that.
Could you explain the difference in open contingency and the assigned? And so the total contingencies, that's the amount that we had set aside. And is open still things that are there if we need them?
Yes, so the assigned contingency are contingencies or monies that we have applied to a contract or a TA for contracting work.
So they've been spent, is what you're saying?
They've been designated, but not spent. So we have them available so that we're not thinking that we have that to assign to another contract. So it's money that's been assigned to a contract that still hopefully will not be used, if that makes sense. So we have contingencies assigned to certain contracts. When that contract closes out, then the assigned contingency would go back to open if we do not use it.
So right now, open contingency means there is 4 million that hasn't been used or assigned?
That's correct.
Okay.
And then we expect that 1.4 in assigned contingency to be added to it when we close the projects out. And that is all. Are there any other questions? Okay.
Any questions of Luke? Thank you very much, and I
Thank you.
appreciate all the work, hard work your folks have done.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm going to take the opportunity to explain a short process that we have to follow through the ERCOT system. And it's the full interconnection study agreement. That's what you have before you today. And I want to explain a little bit about what we use the agreement for, some of the timelines that we have to go through. So a couple of the resources, documents that I've used to help generate these slides, one of them is the ERCOT Resource Interconnection Handbook, version 1.94, dated March 1st, 2023. Some of the things that are highlighted is the purpose of this book is to provide an overview of the process an interconnecting entity, an IE, must follow either to commission new generation to the ERCOT system or to modify existing generation to the ERCOT system at or above 1 megawatt. So if it falls into that category, they have to follow this process. Some of the things that this process looks for is the electronic and manual processes to submit, validate, and approve the resource data, which is the generating data, used for planning, market, and operations systems. So all the studies that are done beforehand are loaded into models, and they look at that information to make sure that, as of today, like they have enough generation available to do certain things on the system. They have contracts for those kind of things. This provides ERCOT with accurate engineering models. That's just what I said. So there's a lot of words up there, just kind of the highlights are really the important stuff that I wanted to point out. In that same booklet, there is a graph that kind of shows you the process that you have to go through and all the information that needs to be submitted and agreed upon within ERCOT. You can see that the full interconnection study is the third one down in the left-hand box. That's kind of helps start the process. Security screening study, I'll talk just a little bit about that here in a minute. That kind of that falls right before the full interconnection study. So that just kind of, some of our generation is over in the left-hand box or right-hand box, step 3 down there, request, commission, and resource. We have reached that step. But today we're going to talk about the full interconnect. The next guide that I used was the ERCOT Planning Guide. Now there's quite a few of these guides out there. All of these documents that I'm talking about are on the ERCOT website. They're publicly available, free for anyone's reading that wants to take the time to do that. But the next guide is the Planning Guide, Section 5, Generator Interconnection and Modification. It's dated April 1st, 2023. They keep those documents fairly new. The interconnection, so what I'm going to focus on is Section 5.3, Interconnection Study Procedures for Large Generators. This involves the security screening study, and it involves the full interconnection study, what we're here to talk about today. So the security screening study has 180 days to the date to notify the IE of the security screening study results. So once the IE or the interconnection entity provides all the security information that ERCOT requires, they have 180 days to respond to them. Once that is done, that triggers the full interconnect study process to start. An FIS consists of a set of steady-state stability, short-circuit facility, and/or other relevant studies that are necessary to determine the reliability impact of the large generator on affected transmission facilities. So once the 180 days for the security study's done, once ERCOT notifies the IE that they are complete with that, ERCOT has 10 days, 10 business days of the IE's request for an FIS study to assign them a TSP, or a transmission service provider, and that's where LP&L comes in. LP&L at this point is the transmission service provider.
So we're the TSP.
Yes, ma'am. ERCOT will designate a TSP to lead the FIS and will contact the TSP to schedule an FIS kickoff meeting. At the kickoff meeting, the interconnect IE and the TSP will discuss the scope of work, the studies that need to be done, who will do the studies, and the cost. TSP will facilitate a general discussion of preliminary study scope. Following the kickoff, the IE and the TSP must agree to the terms of the FIS study. That is where the agreement comes in. There is an agreement signed between the TSP and the IE for the study. The TSP shall submit the FIS study agreement via online RIO system, which is
Who's the IE if we're the TSP?
the interconnecting entity.
Okay.
Whoever wants to connect their resources or generation to the LP&L system. Sorry, thank you for that question. If the IE and the TSP cannot agree to the terms of the FIS study within 60 days, then ERCOT steps in and mediates. So the important information that I just provided you is that there's an FIS study, there's a timeline that needs to be met, and we sometimes are not able to get that information in time for the board meetings. So we would like to give Joel the authority, or recommend to give Joel the authority to be able to sign those agreements. That's just a little bit of information today on what the FIS study is about.
Could you give me an example of an interconnecting entity? I understand we're the
TSP?
So Company X is the interconnecting entity? Help me out.
So someone wants to connect a battery system or build a generation facility within our footprint, within LP&L's footprint. That interconnect entity must get our ERCOT's approval. ERCOT will notify us as being LP&L as the TSP, and we engage in the process.
So they would connect to us, this interconnecting entity, this IE?
Correct.
So what this really is a study that goes through all of this, and they can apply to connect to us, but it has to be approved by ERCOT as well as us.
That is correct.
Okay, I'm sorry, that was kind of confusing. to
Do
me.
we have potential IEs out there?
We do. We had a kickoff meeting March the 28th.
Any other questions? Kind of engineering. And both of our engineers were gone. That's all. Did you have questions?
We have had a kickoff meeting with an entity.
Local firm?
I don't think they're local. Luke?
What kind of generation?
Battery.
So we have a potential for an agreement prior to the next board meeting?
Sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
Y'all know I can't help myself sometimes. So I just wanted to take a minute and say part of the issue is these are also very confidential. Even within LP&L, for example, under the ERCOT protocols and the guides, there's only certain people that can know this information. There's only certain people that can know that information in ERCOT. And so part of this is really sort of twofold from an efficiency standpoint, because one, we get these requests and then we're on this timeline under the ERCOT guides. And two, they are highly competitive and confidential as well. The name of the entity, the size, all of that. And so this provides the director with the flexibility to meet the requirements under the ERCOT protocols and also maintain that confidentiality that we're required to maintain by ERCOT as well. I hope that helps.
Why the confidentiality? Who's being protected?
The entities, really.
The entity.
Well, and I think part of it goes to critical infrastructure. It's information about our system. I mean, it's things that Mr. Sims would never want us to be able to talk about, right? Because those are.
These are people that have commercial interests in the properties that they're trying to develop these projects and whatnot. They don't want everybody to know about that. They don't want people to know what they're up to. So it's just the cloak of secrecy that goes with a project like this until it's to the point where they're going to do it. It may be for protecting land sales, land acquisitions or something. It could be any number of things, but there's a reason for a certain amount of secrecy right to the point where they start construction.
So there is, at some point, disclosure of that would be done to the board?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
At the
I mean,
end,
when we
at the
actually go,
conclusion?
when we actually go through the interconnection itself, we would need board approval for that, right?
I think that's right, and I'd have to look back.
This is for the study. When they actually do the interconnection, it's another agreement, and that, I believe, would be before the board.
You'll see in that far left-hand box, the standard generating interconnect agreement. That's part of the process.
Yeah.
Yes, and ERCOT has a form that unless we can get ERCOT protocol changes, it's a standard form that's used in the entire industry in the ERCOT system. And so at that point, there is a point at which this information becomes public of who it is, what the size is, and all of that. I'd have to go back and look and cite specifically where in the process that occurs, because I don't want to get that wrong to you, but certainly by the interconnect agreement, that's something that would come before you all.
So for clarification, we're talking about giving the director permission for the study, not the actual interconnection.
That's correct.
Thank
And
you.
it's where the entities pay LP&L to conduct the study to see what transmission improvements would be required to facilitate the generation.
Are there any other payments to LPNL other than that? Are there other benefits financially for us?
Not for the study.
I mean, after,
Oh, absolutely, that revenue, things like that.
Yeah, definitely the revenue that would come online. There's the opportunity to split costs for upgrading the systems and whatnot. So all that kind of comes out of what these studies do for us. Are we going to build it all and just dump it in T-costs? Or is the market not going to tolerate that and they want the person interconnecting to kick in some money for it as well? So all those kind of things shake out.
So it's a Texas two-step. This is the study
Yeah.
that is paid for by someone else. And if it passes all muster, then we go to the next phase. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Do I hear a motion to accept this study to authorize the director to execute agreements based?
So move.
Second?
second,
It's been moved and seconded to authorize this study and for our executive director to do that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion carries 7-0. And that resolution is right on the back there, okay? Number 11, are you number 11, Joel?
Number 12, I believe, at least the one I've got. This is the board.
Policies and procedures.
Policies and procedures. We've been working with the board chair. We found some things in what we call the bylaws, the board's policies and procedures, that needed to be updated. There was references, for example, to WTMPA. We don't really have anything to do with them anymore, so those kinds of things needed to come out. We needed to get the pronouns corrected that are just a long time overdue to get done. We had a conflict with the ordinance in terms of how much days cash we're supposed to be holding. The ordinance said 3 months, and the bylaws, or excuse me, the policy said 4. And so we just made some corrections to that, and then some just miscellaneous corrections throughout the document, working with the board chair to get through this. So what we have before you is just the sum total of that. This is a board document. It's under your purview. But we certainly were there to make the recommendations or the changes that need to be put in. So with that said, we would just need board approval for your own policies and procedures.
Just so everyone knows, Jenny has been very helpful in this, as well as Tom Jennings has done a great job. We've coordinated everything with Chad Weaver and the city, so that the ordinances, everything was the same wording, and we were all in sync. So everybody has been in line and been very helpful, and Eddie and Butch had also gave input into this. So I will entertain a motion if there's not any additions to these corrections to our rules, policies, and procedures.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Odom. Second by Mr. Ramirez. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. The consent items, there's 3 items on consent. Does anyone wish to pull one separately? You can see most of it's construction site work and then buying some diggers, 5 bucket trucks and a digger. If nobody wants to remove one, I'll entertain a motion to approve the 3 items on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Passes 7-0. And I'll happily adjourn and thank the staff for being here and all your hard work.